I'm the manager at a bike rental shop in Rotterdam. And 3 months ago, an American couple walked in demanding helmets for their rental bikes. When I told them helmets aren't standard here, the woman looked at me like I'd suggested they ride blindfolded. That's illegal in most civilized countries, she said, crossing her arms. The Dutch government studied this extensively and found our infrastructure makes helmets less necessary than traffic education, I explained. She shook her head and pulled out her phone to show me a CDC article about traumatic brain injuries. Your government clearly hasn't read American safety data, she informed me. We invented modern safety standards. OSHA regulations alone have saved millions of lives since 1970. Her husband nodded seriously, adding that they'd feel more comfortable if we at least posted warning signs about our liability issues. I watched them pedal away, wobbling down the bike lane, swerving into pedestrian zones within 30 seconds. My cousin works at a flower stall in Amsterdam. In last spring, an American tourist bought tulips and asked which direction the windmills were. She pointed him towards Zaanstad, about 20 minutes north. He frowned and asked where the close ones were, the ones in the city center. Amsterdam doesn't have functional windmills in the center, she said. But I saw them in literally every picture online, he protested, scrolling through his phone's photo gallery of tourist photos. Those were taken at heritage sites outside the city. He stared at her, then at the Amsterdam skyline, genuinely confused. So you guys tore them all down? That's like if we demolished the Statue of Liberty for condos. She tried explaining that windmills were industrial water management tools, not decorations, but he'd already moved on to asking where the wooden shoe factory was. You know, where Dutch people buy their daily shoes, he clarified. She pointed him toward a tourist shop that sold decorative clogs. He bought 6 pairs for his family back home. I worked the service desk at Utrecht train station. And last autumn, an American rushed up insisting he needed to file a police report because someone stole his bike seat. My bike's been vandalized, he said, showing me photos of a perfectly normal Dutch city bike with no seat. I explained that many people remove seats when parking to deter theft. He looked skeptical. So you're saying your anti-theft system is to remove part of your own bike? That's the most backward thing I've heard. In America, we have actual bike locks rated by security levels. He pulled up an article on his phone about kryptonite lock ratings. These are tested to withstand angle grinders for up to 5 minutes, he explained. You should look into importing these. I mentioned that we do have locks, some very heavy ones. Then why would anyone need to remove their seat? He asked, exasperated. I told him bike theft is common despite locks, so people take creative prevention steps. He shook his head and muttered something about how American innovation would solve this problem properly. I'm a museum guide at the Rijksmuseum, and last winter, an American family arrived 15 minutes late for their pre-booked tour and seemed annoyed we'd started without them. We're only quarter past, the father said, checking his watch. In most European museums, they wait. I explained that in the Netherlands, start times are exact. He laughed and said this was a bit rigid for a tourist attraction. Americans invented the customer service industry, he informed me. Walt Disney created the modern hospitality experience in 1955, and the principles he established are now global standards. His wife nodded, adding that being flexible with timing shows respect for customers who might hit traffic. I mentioned that the other 12 people on the tour had arrived on time. Then you should have booked a larger window, he suggested. Build in buffer time like professional operations do. He spent the entire tour checking his phone and sighing whenever I stopped to explain a painting. Afterward, he asked where to leave feedback about our hospitality gaps. I directed him to the website. He said he'd compare us to the Louvre, where apparently they understand customer accommodation. My brother manages a cafe in Groningen, and every week American students come in confused about why the staff doesn't check on them every 5 minutes. Last month, one girl flagged down a server and asked if everything was okay, because no one had visited their table in 20 minutes. We assumed you'd signal if you needed something, the server explained. The girl shook her head. In America, good service means being attentive without being asked. That's literally hospitality 101. Her friend jumped in, saying American restaurants pioneered the 2-minute check-back system. Studies show customers spend 17% more when servers check in regularly, she said, as if reciting from a training manual. It's psychology. Your cafe could increase revenue significantly. My brother explained that Dutch diners prefer to be left alone unless they signal. That sounds isolating, the first girl said. Part of dining out is the social connection with staff. She pulled up a Yelp review on her phone about a restaurant in California that made her feel like family. My brother offered to check on them every 10 minutes if they preferred. They smiled and said that would be more normal. I work reception at a doctor's office in The Hague, and last summer an American patient arrived without an appointment expecting to be seen immediately. It's just a basic checkup, he said when I explained he needed to book ahead. I'm only in town for 3 days. I told him our earliest opening was next week. He looked stunned. You're telling me a walk-in patient can't see a doctor for basic preventive care? In the States, we have urgent care clinics on every corner for exactly this reason. It's a $40 billion industry. Started Googling American healthcare statistics on his phone. The U.S. healthcare system processes over 1 billion patient visits annually, he read aloud. You'd think with socialized medicine, the Dutch system would be more accessible. I explained that walk-in visits work differently here, and suggested he contact his travel insurance. He frowned and said this wouldn't be necessary if we'd adopted American efficiency models. Having worked in healthcare administration, I can tell you your bottleneck is resource allocation, he informed me. I asked if he'd like me to call another clinic. He sighed and said he'd just wait until he got home where doctors understand. Accessibility. I'm a civil service clerk at Amsterdam Municipality. And 2 months ago, an American came in furious that he couldn't register his address online at midnight. Your website says it's available 24/7, he said, jabbing his phone screen. I explained the system goes down for maintenance from midnight to 6 a.m. He stared at me like I'd admitted we used carrier pigeons. Amazon Web Services offers 90-9.9-9% uptime, he said slowly, as if teaching a child. That's industry standard. Netflix serves 200 million users globally with almost zero downtime. He pulled up his phone to show me AW's reliability statistics. Your IT department needs to implement cloud redundancy, he continued. This is basic infrastructure that American tech companies solved decades ago. I mentioned that our system serves its purpose fine during business hours. But people have lives, he protested. What if someone works nights? This is discrimination against non-traditional schedules. He asked to speak to someone about modernizing our systems. I gave him an email address for feedback. He said he'd detail how far behind Europe is in basic digital services. My sister works at a cafe in Leiden. And last spring an American couple ordered coffee and seemed personally offended when it arrived in small cups. This is espresso, the man said, confused. We ordered regular coffee, she explained. These were normal Dutch coffee servings. The woman's eyes widened, but it's tiny. Americans perfected the coffee culture. Starbucks revolutionized the entire industry in the 90s. She pulled out her phone to show pictures of Venti-sized cups. A proper coffee is 20 ounces minimum, she continued. The human body needs adequate caffeine for optimal cognitive function. There have been studies. Her husband nodded and mentioned that Europeans probably drink wine at lunch instead, which explained the portion sizes. My sister offered to bring 2 cups each. That's just inefficient, the woman said. 1 large cup makes more sense logistically. She asked if Dutch people have trouble staying awake with such small servings. My sister brought them to double espressos each. They drank them quickly, then complained the coffee was too strong. I'm a bartender in Harlem. And every weekend, American tourists ask why we don't do free refills on sodas. One guy last month became genuinely upset when I charged him for his second Coke. Free refills have been standard since the 1970s, he explained. It's basic hospitality economics. The syrup costs pennies, and customers appreciate the value. He launched into an explanation of how American chain restaurants calculated that unlimited drinks increase customer satisfaction by 41%. Applebee's built their entire model on this, he said seriously. I did a business case study on it junior year. Explained that in Dutch bars, you pay per drink. He shook his head and said this felt nickel and diming. Europeans always claim to be more sophisticated, but then you charge for tap water and refuse refills. America understands customer experience. His friend agreed, saying they'd expected better from such a progressive country. I asked if they wanted another Coke. He said yes, but wanted it noted that he found the policy backward. I charged him €3.50. He left no tip and muttered about reviewing us online. I work at a butcher shop in Maastricht, and last autumn, an American woman came in asking for Dutch cheese, then got frustrated when I directed her next door to the cheese shop. "But you're a food store," she said, gesturing at my displays of meat. "Don't you carry basic groceries?" I explained that in the Netherlands, specialty shops focus on one product category. She laughed and said that sounded inconvenient. In America, we invented the supermarket concept in the 1930s. Piggly Wiggly created the self-service model that revolutionized retail. She explained that she could get meat, cheese, produce, and pharmaceuticals in one place back home. "It's called efficiency," she said. "You'd save so much time consolidating." I told her the cheese shop had excellent Gouda. "I don't want to walk to 3 different stores," she protested. "That's like going backward to the 1900s. She asked if I at least had American cheese slices. I said I didn't carry cheese. She sighed and said she'd just eat out, though European food portions were probably too small anyway. My uncle runs a restaurant in Delft, and last month, an American family asked to customize their stampot by removing the vegetables and adding bacon instead. When he explained stampot as vegetables mixed with potatoes, they looked confused. "So just give us the potato part separately," the father suggested. My uncle said that defeats the dish's purpose. "In America, customer modifications are standard," the man said, clearly annoyed. "The Cheesecake Factory has a menu with 200 items, and every single one can be customized. That's what real choice looks like." His teenage daughter nodded, saying she has a gluten sensitivity and needs accommodations. My uncle asked what she'd like instead. "Can you make the stampot without any grains?" she asked. He explained stampot doesn't contain grains. "But it's bread-based, right?" she said. Her father interrupted, saying they'd just order something simpler, like chicken fingers. My uncle said we don't serve those. "You don't have kids' meals?" the mother asked, shocked. They left and found a McDonald's. I'm a train conductor on the Rotterdam-Amsterdam line. And last week, an American asked if he could upgrade to first class using his United Airlines miles. "I'm a Premier Gold member," he said, showing me his phone. "That should transfer to International Rail." I explained that airline loyalty programs don't apply to Dutch trains. He frowned and said that seemed short-sighted. In America, partnerships between transportation providers create seamless travel experiences. It's called an integrated ecosystem. He pulled up an article about airline alliances on his phone. "Star Alliance connects 26 carriers globally," he read. "You'd think European Rail would have joined by now." I mentioned he could purchase a first-class ticket at the window. "But I already have status," he protested. "I flew over 100,000 miles last year. That should mean something internationally." He asked to speak to whoever handles corporate partnerships. I gave him the NS customer service number. He said he'd explain how far behind European infrastructure is compared to American innovation. My nephew works at a canal tour company in Amsterdam. And every summer, Americans ask why the canals aren't deeper, so boats can go faster. One woman last July complained that the tour took 90 minutes when it should have been 30. With modern dredging technology, you could double the depth and triple the speed, she explained. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers has been optimizing waterways since 1824. She showed her husband an article on her phone about Mississippi River management. They move millions of tons of cargo efficiently, she continued. These tourist canals could be so much more productive. My nephew explained the canals are UNESCO heritage sites from the 17th century. That's the problem right there, she said. You're prioritizing history over efficiency. Americans respect history too, but we also believe in progress. She suggested Amsterdam could build a new canal system alongside the old ones. Keep the heritage ones for tourists, make the new ones functional, she proposed. Her husband agreed, saying that's how America preserved historic Route 66 while building the interstate system. My nephew said he'd pass the feedback along. She asked for the mayor's email. I work at a train ticket counter in Eindhoven. And last month, an American was shocked that we don't announce every single stop on the train in English. How are tourists supposed to know where they are? He demanded. In America, Amtrak makes announcements in English and Spanish at minimum. That's basic accessibility. He explained that federal transportation law requires multilingual communication. The ADA has had comprehensive guidelines since 1990, he said, pulling up a government website. Even our subway systems in major cities use multiple languages. I mentioned that most Dutch people speak English and signs show station names clearly. But what about people who can't read fast? He pressed. Visual processing delays affect millions of Americans. He suggested we implement a real-time translation app. Google Translate could solve this instantly, he said. American tech companies keep creating solutions that Europeans refuse to adopt. I told him the train announcements are in Dutch with English for major stops. He sighed and said this would never meet American standards. He asked how to file a formal accessibility complaint. I gave him a website. I'm a taxi driver in Arnhem. And last autumn, an American passenger insisted we should accept US dollars because the dollar is the global reserve currency. When I said I needed euros, he seemed annoyed. I have cash right here, he said, waving $20 bills. The US dollar is accepted in over 85 countries worldwide. I've used it in airports from Dubai to Singapore. He explained that the Bretton Woods Agreement of 1944 established the dollar's dominance. Most international trade is conducted in dollars, he continued, as if I'd forgotten basic economics. You could literally take this to any bank in Amsterdam and exchange it. I told him I wasn't a bank. But it's more valuable than euros, he protested. The dollar's backed by the strongest economy on earth. He pulled up the current exchange rate on his phone to prove dollars were worth more. I explained I still needed euros for the fare. He paid with a credit card and said Europe's cash systems were decades behind American digital payment innovation. I manage a hotel in Nijmegen, and last month, an American guest insisted on a refund because his room didn't have air conditioning, despite it being March with temperatures at 12 degrees Celsius. I specifically booked a hotel room, which implies climate control, he argued. Every American hotel built since the 1960s includes central air. It's industry standard. He explained that Holiday Inn pioneered universal AC in You're telling me Dutch hotels haven't caught up to American comfort standards from 70 years ago? I mentioned that many Dutch buildings use natural ventilation and heating only. That's not progressive. That's primitive, he said. He showed me Hilton's climate control specifications on his phone. Optimal room temperature is between 68 and 72 degrees Fahrenheit, he read. This is backed by hospitality science. I offered to bring a fan. I don't need a fan in March, he protested. I need you to acknowledge that Dutch hotels need serious infrastructure upgrades. He left a 1-star review mentioning that European accommodations lag behind American innovation by half a century. I still see American tourists every week. Each one absolutely certain the Netherlands would function better if we just adopted their systems.